Is solo leveling overrated? Honestly, yeah, I think so. Somewhat recently, solo leveling became the most rated series on Crunchyroll with the third most highest rated episode. I honestly kinda don't get how, and I don't say that out of hate or to be contrarian. I get why people love it. The power fantasy is somewhat strong, the animation, especially during fight scenes, is flashy, but when you really sit down and break it apart, solo leveling is just kinda hollow beneath the surface. So yeah, if you're into solo leveling for the pure spectacle, I get it, it can scratch that itch, but I think everything we've seen in it has been done better in other shows. I've seen people compare it to fast food, easy and satisfying in the moment, but I think it actually gives it too much credit. To me, it's more like a burger where the patty is decent, but the bun is soggy and the toppings are just off. You take a bite and sure, the meat tastes good. This is equivalent of Sun Jin Woo being overpowered and the fights looking clean. That's the hook, but then everything around it, the story, the side characters, it all feels undercooked. I was watching a video by Pei Talks Anime about the differences between good and great fight scenes, where he used a chart to show how a fight scene is distributed between 6 components. I think it's a good way for me to get my feelings out about solo leveling's fights in a more structured way. So if I was to grade solo leveling, it would look something like this. So let's take this by category. When it comes to animation in solo leveling, I honestly say it lands at an 8.5, but let's break that down into 2 key components: art style and animation quality. Starting with the art style, I'd argue it's pretty standard fare for modern anime. It's clean, polished, and leans into the digital look that's become standard now. You got sharp lines and vibrant lighting. It doesn't really do much to set itself apart stylistically. It follows the current style without trying to introduce any unique visual identity. If you've seen any high production shonen or action series in the last few years, it's effective sure, but it's not particularly bold. Now, when it comes to the animation quality, that's where solo leveling shines a bit more. The use of particle effects, camera movements, and dynamic lighting helps amplify the intensity of each battle. You can definitely tell they got their money's worth. So yeah, while the animation is definitely above average and good to look at, it's not groundbreaking, it does its job well, it's eye candy that we've seen before. When it comes to anime fight scenes, I generally think that there are 2 broad categories: choreography based and what I'd call effects based. With choreography based fights, they're typically more grounded. The core focus is the fluidity and clarity of the motion, the back and forth of blows, and how each movement flows from the last. Think of shows like Windbreaker or that hand-to-hand combat scene in Link Click Season 2. You can follow the physical positioning, the momentum shifts, the reactions, there's a rhythm to it. On the flip side, we have effects based fights. These are usually more about flash and spectacle. Think of giant beams, magical explosions, massive environment destruction. It's more about how they look cool when they unleash their powers. Think of like beam struggles in Dragon Ball Z or flashy spell duels in your fantasy and isekai anime. Now that we understand these 2 categories, and if we were to put them in the ends of a spectrum, I think something like Naruto would land directly in the middle. It has strong flowing hand-to-hand taijutsu sequences, but also leans heavily into big ninjutsu and flashy animation. For solo leveling, I would firmly put it more on the effects heavy side of the spectrum. Most of the fights in solo leveling are built around spectacle. You're watching a light show with streaks of color, slow motion impacts, particle effects everywhere, and while that can be fun to look at, it doesn't offer much in terms of actual combat choreography. There's little sense of technique or creative tactics. Often the fights are reduced to Jinwoo fastly dodging and slicing around moments, dressed up in dazzling VFX to make it feel more epic. Even the more grounded fights, like the one against the ice elf dude, doesn't do much to raise the bar. Sure, there's some back and forth, but the choreography itself is average at best. The movements lack clarity and fluid progression you see in other better fight scenes. And on the tactical side of these fights, it's also pretty bland. There's no real creativity on how Sun Jin Woo uses his abilities. He rarely combines his skills in unexpected ways and will use his environment to gain an advantage. It's mostly just him overpowering enemies with raw strength or summoning an even bigger army than last time. Now let's talk about how repetitive and shallow these fights are when it comes to character dynamics. Almost every battle follows the same predictable pattern. Sun Jin Woo shows up, side characters wrecked in awe, and the villain gets instantly bodied. That's it. The side characters don't contribute to the fight, don't really grow from the experience, and don't really challenge Jinwoo's decisions. Instead, they just exist to glorify him basically standing on the sideline. It feels like their only job is to glaze him with admiration, not to act like different characters. On the other side, the villains in the anime are no better. They're just fodder. Most of them pop up with the same generic energy, I'm the strongest, you can't beat me, and then proceeds to get clapped within minutes. There's no real personality, no ideology, no complexity, just a brief threat designed to be effortlessly overcome. Even when the anime introduces what should be major enemies, they don't feel intimidating because we've seen this formula play out so many times before. They're not characters, they're punching bags made to look scary before Jinwoo shows up and solos them. When it comes to the directing in Solo Leveling, I honestly don't have much to say. I rated a 6 out of 10 because it's fine. Nothing terrible, but nothing particularly stood out either in my opinion. The anime is directed by Shinsuke Nakashige. I probably butchered that. And for a bit of context from what I've seen, this is his second time fully directing a series, the first being Mother of Goddess Domitry. Before this, he worked as an episode director on a few shows like Sword Art Online and Keijo, so he definitely has experience in the industry. But stepping up from episode direction to overseeing a heavy action show can be a big step up from the slice of life he fully directed before. Now, to be fair to Nakashige, Solo Leveling is a huge project to take on for only your second full directing gig. It can definitely be high pressure. It has a massive global fan base and it's a series people have been hyped for years, so I can respect the challenge. But at the end of the day, the direction feels very standard and that's fine. In short, the directing in Solo Leveling is solid but nothing special to write home about in my eyes. Honestly, there's not a whole lot to say about the combat systems in Solo Leveling. You've got your classic setup, spells, daggers, item drops, and dungeons. If you've watched a typical dungeon crawler or isekai anime, you already know how this world works. There's nothing new going on here. But to be fair, I will give credit for one thing. Jinwoo's summon mechanic so far actually stays. Unlike a lot of overpowered protagonists who just drop powers every arc, Jinwoo sticks with his shadows and keeps building on that system. It's cool that his main ability, raising fallen enemies as shadow soldiers, stays as a big part of how he fights. It gives him a unique identity, even if the fights themselves still feel one-sided. That said, outside of the summons, the combat system doesn't really do anything interesting. And since Jinwoo just keeps getting stronger with no downside, there's never much tension. The world building with the gates, guilds, and hunters is also pretty surface level, just enough to explain why we're heading in another dungeon. Okay, I'll give credit to Solo Leveling. It definitely brings the hype when it comes to the fights. The animation slick, the sound design solid, and those slow-mo moments, yeah, they're cool. There's no denying it looks good. You definitely get those let's go moments for sure. But here's the thing. It could be better if the show actually builds up those hype moments. Like yeah, the visuals slap, but there's not always enough weight behind them. Take the Ant King. Shows up, causes some chaos, and then Jinwoo comes in and slaps his shit in like 2 episodes. There's barely any time to let the threat feel real. This dude could have been a pretty good villain, but he ends up just being another speed bump for Jinwoo's path. That's the kind of issue overall. The anime throws big fights at you back to back, but without proper build up, they don't land as hard as they can. There's not enough suspense or tension leading into them. It's just like, here's a cool monster and then 5 minutes later it's already dead. So yeah, the hype is there, it's just somewhat shallow. Fun to watch no doubt, but it's the kind of hype that fades fast because there's no emotional punch behind it. With better build up, these scenes could have been unforgettable. Instead, they're just flashy highlights that come and go. One thing I want to say as well, it's not really aura farming in my eyes when you're beating up children. What I mean by that is whoever Jinwoo fights gets introduced without many feats to see them as a threat, and may as well be children compared to Jinwoo, which in my opinion it doesn't do much for Jinwoo's aura. How am I supposed to feel impressed when Jinwoo wins? Compare that to someone like Madara Uchiha in Naruto. That's real aura right there. The show builds this dude up for ages. We hear about him long before we ever see him, and when he finally pulls up, he bodies an entire army, drops 2 meteors out of the sky like it's nothing, and then fights all 5 Kage at the same time. And the reason that moment hits so hard is because we already know how powerful those Kage are. We've seen what they can do, so when Madara shows up and makes them all look weak, we're impressed. Something like that has way more aura than anything I've seen Jinwoo do. But outside the battles, how does Solo Leveling do? In my opinion, it's not so great either. Let's talk about how Solo Leveling handles its side characters compared to something like One Punch Man. And yeah, I know before anyone jumps in with the "but it's called Solo Leveling" argument, I hear you. But here's one thing. I don't see Saitama always killing his enemies with one punch. What I think Solo Leveling is really missing and what One Punch Man nails is character dynamics. In Solo Leveling, side characters basically exist for 3 reasons. To either 1, praise Jinwoo, 2, get bodied by something to show how strong Jinwoo is by comparison, or 3, be antagonistic to Jinwoo only to then, you guessed it, glaze him. That's it. That's the whole cycle. Like, you can take out half the named characters in Solo Leveling and it wouldn't actually change anything about the plot because the story doesn't care about them. They're props for Jinwoo's glow up. They enter a scene, get shocked at how powerful he is, and then exit stage left. Now, compare that to One Punch Man. Saitama isn't even always the focal point, and when he is, the show often uses him in contrast to other characters. He's got that one-sided rivalry with Speedo Sound Sonic, who's constantly trying to outdo him, even though Saitama couldn't care less. Then there's the mentor-mentee relationship with Genos, who takes everything seriously while Saitama just wants discounted groceries. Even Tatsumaki, who's a superpowered brat, plays off him in a chaotic way. These dynamics add layers that make the world feel like it exists beyond the protagonist. One Punch Man lets its side characters grow, clash, have mini arcs, form relationships. Meanwhile, in Solo Leveling, it's like Sung Jinwoo is the story is Sung Jinwoo, no one else matters. But in One Punch Man, a random character like Moomin Rider, who's just a guy on a bike, can show up suddenly Leveling and you're feeling something, you care, because One Punch Man gives space for its side characters to have heart, agency, and their own little side stories. Also, can I talk about how some of you fans absolutely lost their minds when Jinru actually started showing some emotion after completing his goal to cure his mother? We got some development and reaction from the main character, and a certain group of fans hated it because he wasn't aura farming. That reaction says a lot about how some people view Solo Leveling. For some fans, Jinru isn't a character. They don't want growth or emotion, they just want the power fantasy on loop. As long as he's walking into dungeons and absolutely humiliating everyone with overwhelming energy, they're happy. But the second he stops and shows some vulnerability, suddenly it's a problem. Also, to be honest, I think the Solo Leveling anime adaptation came a bit too late to make the same impact the manhwa did when it first dropped. Back when the manhwa was gaining traction, the idea of a super OP protagonist climbing a leveling system in a game-like world still felt fresh. It wasn't entirely new, but the execution was slick, the art was clean, and it hit at the time when that kind of story still felt exciting. Fast forward to now, and the market is completely oversaturated with similar concepts. OP main characters, dungeon raids, stat screens, you name it. At this point, Solo Leveling no longer stands out as something original, just one of many with the same concepts used. But weirdly enough, even though it missed the mark in terms of being original, it also kind of came out at the perfect time to blow up. Anime is more popular, and with that a certain subsection of fans have grown a lot, specifically those who mainly care about flashy animation and fight scenes. For them, story and character development take a backseat to spectacle, and Solo Leveling definitely has that. So while it might not impress people looking for depth or originality, it's basically tailor-made for those kind of hype-driven anime-focused fan culture that's prevalent right now. So yeah, in a way, both too late and right on time. Too late to be a trailblazer, but right on time to ride the wave of anime's mainstream and the appetite for visually driven, action-heavy series. I try to find something good in anything I watch, so one thing I'll give Solo Leveling credit for is I think it's actually a pretty solid way to get people into anime. Like, if someone's never watched anime before, this is a kind of show that can really pull them in. It looks amazing with the animation being super clean, the fights are flashy, and the overall production quality is high. It shows off how good an anime can look when the studio goes all in, and that alone can be enough to catch someone's attention. The story is also really easy to follow. It doesn't throw a bunch of complicated world building or confusing lore at you right away. It's just a simple, straightforward power fantasy. The weak guy gets strong, fights monsters, level ups, repeats. That kind of setup can be super approachable, especially for someone who isn't used to how wild some anime plots can get. So yeah, even if Solo Leveling isn't super original or deep, it can do a good job at being accessible and somewhat entertaining. It's that kind of show that might not blow away some anime fans, but it can definitely hook someone and even get them to check out other series.
Bullshit!